No, investors don't wait for you. You're spending 5 years. I'm spending 2 years or 3 years. I'll double up my investment rather than other folks who double their money. They're not going to wait for you. Who keeps money sitting anywhere in the world? Nobody keeps money sitting anywhere. You got to put it to use. But let's go on to our Nigerian breweries looking to another 8 billion commercial papers. The news we're getting out of the FMDQ is that Dangote Cement will officially hit the FMDQ with an event expected next week, Thursday. So Nigerian breweries, another bellwether in our market in terms of market cap, is also raising commercial papers. Why is everybody raising commercial papers?
Well, it's another source of funding, less dependence on the banks. You know, we've had issues with bank debts that haven't been repaid, you know, non-performing loans that have been growing. So I think most companies now are trying to, you know, focus on other ways to look for investments or look for financing or capital. And it's also cheaper. You know, the rate at which you would actually issue these commercial papers would be significantly lower than what you get at the bank. So it's, well, at this time, which should not be the case. But it's nice to involve, you know, the public, the investors, both global and domestic, within the system to, you know, invest in some of these companies, which also would reduce the cost.
Should we start getting worried with the global oil marketplace right now, with price, with all about U.S. exports, the trade tariff fight, although that is beginning to look like it's tapering because China and U.S. seem to be interested in talking to each other and avoid a full-blown global trade war?
Well, I think we should be worried, but not at this point. But what we've seen is that the reason for this dip in oil prices as of today is as a result of the reopening of Libya export terminals, about 4 of them, which brings about 850,000 barrels per day into the market. So those are some of the short-term, you know, short-term movements in prices that we see. But also one thing to significantly look at is the fact that President Trump has, you know, been asking Saudi Arabia and Russia to keep increasing their oil production, which is great now because we have some supply shortfalls in Venezuela, some in Nigeria as well. We had obviously in Libya, which has been reopened now. And if they do increase their oil production now, it's great. But in the longer term, at some point where we cannot control, you know, this oil production, then it becomes an issue. So at this point, we're not so optimistic about where oil prices are going to now. And President Trump, you know, with the U.S. production and all that, and reducing demand as well, because I know OPEC released their first forecast for 2019, where they mentioned that oil demand is expected to decline to about 1.65 million barrels per day to about 1.45. So that's a major issue. If we're trying to ramp up supply and then reduce, and demand is predicted to reduce at this point, then we will obviously face some issues with prices.
If Libya starts pumping, then we should be a little bit concerned, shouldn't we, as we see a bit of a tapering in our own, a bit of a slowdown in our own output. June, we did just about 1.58 million barrels per day. So if Libya is bringing 800,000 back on stream and trying to resolve some of his own internal insecurity, violence, whatever, there, and they're putting more barrels on the market, and we are beginning to slow down a little bit, should that worry our own managers in the oil and gas sector?
Well, it shouldn't worry them per se, but it's something to also, you know, focus on. But we do know that obviously the force majeures that we've seen, it'll definitely, you know, die down in the next coming months. We should see our production, you know, increase. At least they're trying to do something about correcting, you know, our production lines. So that's something we were trying to look at. But at this point, worrying about Libya, I think it would only affect prices from as of today, tomorrow. But in the longer term, we don't expect, you know, we expect the market to balance out when Saudi Arabia and Russia come into the market.
I'm sure you economists, your entire team at FDC is watching what's going on in Abuja since Wednesday as far as the Africa Continental Free Trade Area Agreement is concerned. A bit of a soundbite from the government. Some of those who are involved says will sign at some point in time. And this is in your news. President Buhari says we're set to sign. The AFCFTA set to sign. What does that mean? Any clarity as to when Nigeria, which is an important member of the Pan-African Economic and Business business community and trade is yet to put pen to paper?
Well, when looking at the free trade area or free trade agreement, I think what's important is to look at what the benefits and costs would be. The benefits usually is boosting economic growth, export expansion. We have, if there are no tariffs within trade within Africa, then we should expect that, there'll be boosting our exports, which should also lead to economic growth. Then there should also be technological transfer. We can benefit from other neighboring countries. And at this point, it seems like some companies struggle with, growing technological wise, or even getting to a point where we're at par with some Western countries. So I think it's great news on that part, but also the cost of it is crowding out effects of some of our companies. If we open our market to some of all these African countries, then it will mean that some companies would actually lay off some workers, which would actually decline our increase our unemployment rates as well. So these are some of the aspects that we should look at. But at this point, it's also important to learn from what other countries have been doing. We've also seen that in other free trade areas, we understand that the longer-term benefits actually outweigh the short-term costs. So it's great news for the president to say this, but the key thing is, when would we actually sign this agreement?
But you're asking me, I don't know. I'm not the president, so I'm asking everyone here in Abuja since Wednesday, when are we going to sign? And no one seems to be sure, but it looks like somehow we were all aware that the AFCFTA was coming, but it looks like the trade agreement is catching up with all the backlogs of years and decades of lack of infrastructure. Power, for example, is one major issue that was discussed here over the last 2 days at the AfrExim annual meetings, which is a major problem for Nigeria, because even for the closest neighbors here, they can, at the level of electricity supply they have, they can produce light products very quickly and faster than we will do.
Yes, definitely. Same thing with the technological transfer. We can actually learn from what other countries are doing regarding their power sector, since we've not been able to do it for the past few months now. Now, power sector is, the power from the grid has actually increased, but it's very unreliable. Now, diesel prices are low. It's great for, as a substitute for power, but we've had issues with uptake, downsides to, our power sector. So it's something that we can actually learn from other countries.
Yes, we can learn. Bolanle, I'm sorry, let me take this straight from you. Let's take a break. Thank you very much, and see you some other time.